What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so this is a response to a podcast I saw late last night with Ticket TV, Mojave Sports Nation, and LB. Shout out to all three of those channels. And if you're not subscribed to those three, you really should. All right. And they were talking about Bill Russell, and I really wish that I was on there. I'm having some technical issues right now, so I only really can upload for another week. You know what I'm saying? And then after that, hopefully I'll be able to get back on, these shows and argue with people about basketball, I guess. But look, they're talking about Bill Russell, and there was a caller that I guess is a Bill Russell fan, and they were trying to tell this guy, look, Bill Russell is a phenomenal player, but when you compare him to the GOATs, there's some stuff lacking there. Okay, there's some definite things lacking. And I agree with almost everything they said. You know what I'm saying? Ticket, LB, Mojave, Sports Nation. Um, Bill Russell is, as a basketball player, when you're making the GOAT assertion, he has way too many holes in his game, or had way too many holes in his game. Look, by no means am I or anybody trying to denigrate Bill Russell, the man. Bill Russell did a lot for black people in the civil rights era. He was one of the few athletes, other than Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the real Jim Brown. I don't know who this guy is now. This Trump supporter. I don't know who the hell that guy is now. But other than those athletes, Bill Russell was right up there too. He put his time and money into charities and programs and organizations built to and created to help black people and communities. So Bill Russell gets my undying support from that and for that. I read about the racism he experienced as a child growing up in the Deep South. He experienced the loss of his mother at a young age. His family, moved to the West Coast for a better life for him and the family. I know that at one point he was a tremendous, tremendous athlete, ranked number two all time. Well, not all time, but ranked number two in the world in high jumping in 1956. Which he had to school Kendrick Perkins on when Kendrick Perkins made an absurd, assertion that LeBron was the most athletic player of all time. That's nonsense. All right. So, of course, the 11 championships. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Bill Russell was a tremendous player. Bill Russell, throughout his entire career, especially the first few years, experienced a lot of racism in the city of Boston, a city he was helping to deliver championships to, were giving him hell. I read about the crosses being burned on his yard. I read about Bostonians actually invading his home and defecating in his bed and writing "Get out, nigger" on his property. I read all about this stuff that he had to go through. Okay, stuff that would make a lot of us, we get mad when somebody in the stands yell out the N word or something that sounds racially charged. He was going through that, so I get it. I get it. I have nothing but respect for Bill Russell, the man, and a lot of respect for him as a player. He was the innovator of the shot block. He helped to really popularize the shot block and made it a weapon. He was a very high IQ basketball player. All right, he usually made the correct basketball play out there as a teammate. I remember reading about how when he would block shots, a lot of guys when they block shots, they try to intimidate the opponent. They'll try to block the shot. Wilt did it too for a long time. They'll try to block the shot into the third row. Bill Russell would try to block the shot, but he would try to tap it in the direction of a teammate to initiate a fast break. All right. So look, I get it. Bill Russell won 11 championships. He was the best defensive player in the league in his era. Some people still consider him the best def- defensive player of all time now. Um, he was a dominant rebounder. But there's some truths about Bill Russell that have to be mentioned. Okay. Number one, when Bill Russell started playing basketball, well, when he started playing in the NBA in 1956, this is a league that was vastly different even from the league that it would be 8, 9 years later. This was a league that was lagging behind even Major League Baseball at that time. And progress with representation of African American players. Remember, Jackie Robinson integrated Major League Baseball a decade prior in 1947. Larry Doby was the first American League black player, I think, like in 1950 or 49 or 50 or something like that. So, uh, so the NBA was way behind. Now, there were black players in the NBA when Bill Russell got there, but they were relegated to being tokens, like basically just coming off the bench as splinters, even though they were probably more talented than 85 to 90% of the people on their teams. Some of them actually were the best players, talent, skills wise. But because of the realities of the NBA, the good old boy system in the early to mid 1950s, they didn't get any minutes. You know what I'm saying? Um, for the most part. When Bill Russell joined the Boston Celtics, there was only one black star in the NBA, to my recollection, and that was Maurice Stokes of the then Cincinnati Royals, who unfortunately would suffer that catastrophic brain injury in the last day of the, what was it, the 56-57 season, I think it was, which would render him, after the complications set in, it would render him, I think, a quadriplegic for the rest of his life until he died of a heart attack in 1970. But when Bill Russell came to the league, he was the first, you know, other than Maurice Stokes, the first black star, what I'm saying, in the NBA. And you have a guy that's 6'9" and so versatile, and with quickness and with his leaping ability. He was destined to, just from sheer athleticism alone, dominate. Let's be honest. Like when you look at it, the average height at that time in the NBA was about 6 foot, maybe 6'3", 6'4". I know it was 6'2" in 1947. I think the average height was maybe 6'4" by then. So Bill Russell is 6'9", maybe 6'9.5", has a vertical leap well over 40 inches. We already saw the footage of him jumping over a guy in a fast break. So of course he was going to dominate. He came in the league, and I think he averaged maybe 14 points, 19 rebounds. You know what I'm saying? God know how many blocks he averaged when he first got in the league. They didn't record that, but I'm pretty sure he probably averaged 6 to 8 blocks, at least that in some seasons, maybe more. When you think about the pace that the Celtics played at, it was probably even more than that. He probably had some seasons where if they kept track of the stats, He averaged over double-digit blocks in some seasons, 10, 11, 12 blocks, something like that. You know what I'm saying? Um, but let's be honest about something, okay? Number one, let's talk about his game. Yes, he was a dominant rebounder, but he was not the greatest technical rebounder. He was not a guy that got a lot of his rebounds from boxing out. He literally got a lot of them just because he could out jump everybody. You know what I'm saying? And I also saw, if you look at some of the footage, some of his rebounds would be called over the backhand, right? He just got a lot of them because he was. It's not his fault. I mean, he was supposed to dominate, but he got a lot of his rebounds because of he was just physically bigger and stronger and faster and quicker than his counterparts. You know what I'm saying? And also, Ticket made a point that a lot of his rebounds was him, rebounding his own misses. So at the end of the day, was he a great rebounder? Of course. But, was he the technical rebounder, the technically great rebounder that, say, a Dennis Rodman or a Dwight Howard or a Moses Malone was, or even a Wilt? No, no. When when they went head to head against each other, despite the prevailing notion that Bill Russell shut down Wilt Chamberlain, which was bull, Wilt Chamberlain just dominated him head to head in all of the games that they played against one another. Remember, they played a lot of games against one another. I can't remember exactly how many, but I want to say at least 130 times, maybe 140 times they played against each other. And in those head-to-head contests, Bill Russell averaged 23 points and 14 rebounds. That sounds very impressive, right? 23 points and 14 rebounds. Well, it would sound very impressive, but, you know, until you consider the fact that in those contests, Wilt Chamberlain averaged 30 points and 30 rebounds. So Wilt Chamberlain was out rebounding Bill Russell 2-1 on the boards and outscoring. Wilt was out rebounding Bill Russell 2-1 on the boards and outscoring him vastly. So, and then you have to consider this. When Wilt was playing on those teams, right, Wilt had more responsibilities than Bill Russell. Bill Russell really all he had to worry about was rebounding and playing defense. Wilt had to rebound, play defense, and try to contend with Boston's defense. Also, he didn't have, and this is the big knock on Bill Russell, which I'll get into a little later. He didn't have 12 Hall of Fame teammates in a 13-year career. Okay. Um, then look, Bill Russell is a great player, but for his career, he did only shoot 44%. All right. Now I know Bill Russell did have one little go-to move, which was his jump hook. But I mean, look, I don't understand something about Bill Russell. Now I get it. Some of the lower field goal percentage at the time had to deal with the way that the game was played. It had to deal with the lanes. I get it. It was sort of clogged up. There was no 3-point line, so a lot of traffic was in, the mid, in the, mid range area. So I get it. I get why the field goal percentages were a little bit lower. But what I don't get is after the lanes were widened for the second time in the mid 60s, why was Bill Russell's field goal percentage still the same? If anything, they got lower. Whereas other centers coming in, Walt Bellamy, Wilt Chamberlain was already there, but you saw his field goal percentage start to rise. Like, for instance, Wilt came into the NBA. He shot 46% his first year. His second year, he shot 49%. All right. Then I think his third year, he reached 50%. And then afterwards, his field goal percentage kept rising and rising and rising. 53%, 55%, 58%, 60%. When his Lakers years, he was in the upper 60s until his last year, I think it was either 72 or 73, he shot a record 73% from the floor. So with Chamberlain, he got more and more efficient. But Russell got almost less efficient. You know, he had some seasons where he shot 40% from the floor. But you're 6'9" and you're right under the fucking basket. And don't tell me it was because of defenses, because Bill Russell was not a scorer like that. So, you know, as a scorer, Bill Russell was sort of atrocious. I mean, sort of, because, you know, at the end of the day, look, Nate Thurman shot a higher percentage. Nate Thurman, who was not a great scorer, shot over 46% for his career. And, you know, this is the biggest indictment on Bill Russell, okay? As far as calling him the GOAT. Let's look at the team that he had. Number one, with Bob Cousy, right? With Bob Cousy, who Vern Mickelson, who's with the Minneapolis Lakers, said that Bob Cousy got away with a lot of stuff that no other player got away with. Okay? Mr. Trump loving Bob Cousy, who some idiot claimed I was capping for. Right? Great player, don't get me wrong. But he was a Trump supporter, so that clouds my judgment on Bob Cousy a little bit, you know, when it comes to him personally. But anyway, Bob Cousy got to do all these things with the basketball in an era where they were very, very conservative about players. You feel me? You notice that? You notice how Bob Cousy was able to do all these things with the basketball in the 1950s that no other player was able to do or be able to accomplish, what they would call palming. So Bob Cousy had all this freedom with the basketball, do all these different things. All right, so he was considered the game's best ball handler and the game's best passer. And this is your teammate. All right, this is your teammate, Bill Russell, the best handler, ball handler, and the best passer. And Bob Cousy could score. Bob Cousy scored 50 points in a playoff game before. So Bob Cousy could score. And he had a little bit of a jump shot, right? A nice little mid-range jumper. Then, as your second, or as your number two, your shooting guard, you have the league's best pure shooter in Bill Sharman. The best shooter in the game. Leads the NBA all the time in free throw percentage. Was the first player to shoot over 40% from the floor as a perimeter scorer. Bill Sharman. He's like, it would be like, I'm gonna tell you what it's like. It's like having a better version of Jason Williams, right? Take the best version of Jason Williams and improving him and having, you know, somebody like Mark Price playing the two. So you got the two best perimeter guys in your backcourt. Then a little later on, you have John Havlicek, the best all-around player in the NBA. I think, honestly, John Havlicek is better than Scottie Pippen. He was a better, more dominant scorer. He was clutch. Yeah, he didn't have the best field goal percentage at only 43.9%, but a lot of that was from the earlier years when his shot selection wasn't as good. And later on, he shot more in the 44 to 46% range. But John Havlicek is the best perimeter defender in the NBA. Great rebounder and a great scorer coming off your fucking bench. Not to mention all the other Hall of Famers that are on your team. You know what I'm saying? The Casey Jones. You know what I'm saying? The Tom Sanders. And then you have Sam Jones. Sam Jones, the biggest clutch shooter and probably the second best pure shooter after Bill Sharman on your team as well. When Sam Jones began to star, Bill Sharman started coming off the bench. So these are guys on your team. You got two of the best scorers and shooters, the best playmaker and ball handler, the best all-around guy, the best perimeter defender to go along with Bill Russell, the best interior defender, a great defensive player in Casey Jones, a great interior defender and player in Tom Sanders. How the fuck do they not win championships? The more you learn about the Boston Celtics, the more you begin to feel for Wilt Chamberlain. The fact that Wilt, with an old Paul Arizin and Tom Gola and Guy Rodgers, not that those are bad players, but with those guys as his best teammates, the fact that he was able to elevate those Warriors teams to the point where they were even threatening to beat the Celtics and to, at least make the games interesting down the wire is an accomplishment in itself. Look, if you think I'm lying about how absurdly dominant the Celtics were at that time, the one time they lost in the finals, it was by a point in 1958 to the St. Louis Hawks. And it took Bob Pettit to have the best game of his fucking life, a 50-point game. It took the best game he had up to that point and his best playoff performance for them to win by a point to win that championship. I mean, we got to be honest here, man. Like he had more help than anybody else in the history of professional basketball. Then people like to say, well, when Bill Russell left, the Celtic dynasty fell apart. Well, you got to also remember something else. When Bill Russell retired, Sam Jones retired too. You know what I'm saying? Sam Jones retired, and I want to say Tom Sanders retired. I think it was a couple of Celtics that called it quits after Bill Russell retired. It wasn't just Bill Russell. And it wasn't that Boston totally fell apart either, if I'm not mistaken. I think Boston may have had one bad season, maybe a mediocre season. But once they got Dave Cowens, once they got that big man, you know what I'm saying, who was actually more skilled than Bill Russell, to be honest with you, Dave Cowens, they became a great team once again. The only thing is that the NBA by then had caught up with the Celtics. You know what I'm saying? The NBA had caught up, and there were more franchises. That by then there was no longer just 8 teams. By I think Wilt Chamberlain's last season, there were like 17, 18 teams. So now you have more teams. You have talent spread out more throughout the league, and you don't have just one goddamn team like the Boston Celtics with all the talent on one damn team. So that's why you don't have these dynasties anymore. One championship. Like, look, the Minneapolis Lakers, they won 5 championships in like a 6-year span or something like that, right? In the early 1950s. Part of that was because there was only 8 or 9 damn teams, you know, and the Minneapolis Lakers had a lot of good players. They had, Hall of Fame players: George Mikan, Vern Mickelson, Jim Pollard, and Slater Martin. Slater Martin was the best point guard in the NBA at that time. You have the best, most dominant center. You have the best power forward, and you have the most athletic three in jumping Jim Pollard. So of course you're going to win a lot of championships. So that's what I'm trying to say, man. Look, Bill Russell's great, but you have to be realistic about certain things with Bill Russell. You just got to. Great player, but like I've said before, as an actual basketball player, I don't know if you were to take him off the Celtics and put him on, say, the Cincinnati Royals at that time, you know, how good. As a matter of fact, a better argument would be if you were to take Bill Russell and put him on the Philadelphia Warriors and put Will Chamberlain on the Boston Celtics. Okay, and then now all of a sudden you surround Wilt with a lot of talent, and Wilt doesn't have to do anything but focus on rebounding. Look. This is the argument that kills all of us. All right, this is the most simple argument I can make to kill anything. Wilt Chamberlain, when he was with the Lakers, all right, when Wilt was a shell of himself by the early 1970s, Wilt with the Lakers as the third, then fourth, and then later the last optional offense, when he was only averaging maybe 12 points a game or something. Wilt played better mimicking Bill Russell than Bill Russell did. And why do I say that? Well, Wilt, basically off one goddamn leg, was a better rebounder in his twilight. He may not have had the he may not have had the versatility defensively by that stage that Bill Russell had, but he was a more dominant, rebounder and shot blocker, more dominant, physical, imposing, specimen and force. And the field goal percentage was absurd: 63, 68, 73%, 65%. He was totally extraordinarily efficient. So he proved that he could play like Bill Russell. Imagine if he played like that when he was 25. He would have been. He could have played like that, and he did begin to play like that. When you put talent around Wilt Chamberlain, he adjusted. He became. He was to me a better passer than Bill Russell. He was a more skilled guy. This is a guy that played with the Harlem Globetrotters for a while before he joined the NBA. But there's no way that Bill Russell could imitate Wilt Chamberlain. He didn't have the skill set to do that. Couldn't do it. So that's pretty much it, man. You know what I'm saying? Bill Russell's a great player, but he had limitations, and he was helped out tremendously by having not just Hall of Fame teammates, but top-notch, top-tier Hall of Fame teammates. John Havlicek's a top 25 all-time player. Bob Cousy's a top 30 to 35 all-time player. Bill Sharman is probably maybe still top 75 or top 80. 20 years ago, he was top 50. You know, so he had some great teammates. Sam Jones is top 50 to top 55. So he had some great players who played 50, 60 years ago. Will Chamberlain's teammates were Guy Rogers, who's not really in anybody's top 100, 250. Tom Gola, who's probably not anybody's top 300. And Paul Arizin at one point was top 50, but maybe he's top 70 or 80. And then by that stage, Paul Arizin was old. So this was the team that Wilt had versus the team that Bill had. So what you guys think?